Welcome, welcome, welcome to Community Church Unitarian Universalist. I am your minister, the Reverend Darcy Roque, and it is a joy to be with you for some, perhaps the last time, virtually today. And we also ask, we are moving into new spaces and new places, very exciting. You may see the new projector and the work that we're doing on that. So we are figuring out a few, I don't even want to call them bugs. Let's call them butterflies today in terms of technical stuff before we then also open our doors to congregants next week as well as staying online. So we are so delighted and we're so happy that we can be doing this safely and together. So who are we as Community Church? Well, as you can see here, CCUU is a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Now, you will have hopefully seen in your Thursday or Friday announcements everything that's happening for the week, including our reopening next week, pastoral care needs, all the ministries that we all are part of, the beginning of Dinners for Six again, very exciting things happening and coming your way. We also have them at the beginning of our service, and we hope to keep those as well. But I'm particularly excited because I'm not wearing my robes today, just my stole, because we have another amazing voice at our pulpit. We are delighted to have Dr. Laura Miller here with us today. So Dr. Miller's career was primarily in theater, though she has worked most recently as an environmental activist, fighting mountaintop removal coal mining in Appalachia. She is also a Wiccan High Priestess and a Reiki master, teacher, and healer. She has been part of the CCUU family since January 2014. Amazing part of our family, and part of this is that she has been a part of our sermon seminar series for a couple of times now, and she has a beautiful sermon that she will be presenting today. So we are just so delighted to have her at our pulpit. So with that, we will be lighting our chalice.
We light this flame to affirm the light of truth and knowledge, the warmth of love and community, and the fire of hope and commitment.
Good morning, everyone. I have the pleasure this morning to, at the request of Dr. Laura Miller, I'm going to be reading The Butter Battle Book by Dr. Seuss. On the last day of summer, 10 hours before fall, my grandfather took me out to the wall. For a while, he stood silent, and finally he said, with a sad, very sad shake of his very old head, "As you know, on the side of the wall, we are the Yooks, and on the far other side of the wall live the Zooks." Then my grandfather said, "It's high time that you knew of the terrible, horrible thing that Zooks do. In every Zook house and every Zook town, every Zook eats his bread with the butter side down. But we Yooks, as you know, when we breakfast or sup, spread our bread," grandfather said, "with the butter side up. That's the right, honest way." Grandpa gritted his teeth, "So you cannot trust a Zook who spread bread underneath. Every Zook must be watched. He has kinks in his soul. That's why, as a youth, I made watching my goal, watching Zooks for the Zook watching Border Patrol." In those days, of course, the wall wasn't so high, and I could look any Zook square in the eye. If he dared to come close, I could give him a twitch with my tufted, prickly snickberry switch. For a while, it worked fine. All the Zooks stayed away, and our country was safe. Then one terrible day, a very rude zook by the name of Van Itch snuck up and slingshotted my snickberry switch. With my broken off switch, with my head hung in shame, to the chief zookaroo in the great sorrow I came. But our leader just smiled. He said, "You're not to blame, and those zooks will be sorry they started this game. We'll dress you up right in a fancier suit. We'll give you a fancier slingshot to shoot." And he ordered the boys in the back room to figure how to build me some sort of triple sling jigger. With my triple sling jigger, I sure felt much bigger. I marched to the wall with great vim and vigor, right up to Van Itch with my hand on the trigger. "I'll have no more nonsense," I said with a frown, "from zooks who eat bread with the butter side down." Van Itch looked quite sickly, and he ran off quite quickly. I'm unhappy to say he came back the next day in a spiffy new suit with a big new machine, and he snarled as he said, looking frightfully mean, "You may fling those hard rocks with your triple sling jigger, but I also now have my hand on the trigger. My wonderful weapon, the jigger rock snatch'em, will fling 'em right back just as quick as we catch 'em. We'll have no more nonsense. We'll take no more gup from youks who eat bread with the butter side up." "I have failed, sir," I sobbed as I moved my report to the chief Yukaroo in the headquarters fort. He just laughed. "You've done nothing at all of the sort. Our slingshots have failed. That was old-fashioned stuff. Slingshots, dear boy, are not modern enough. All we need is some newfangled kind of gun. My boys in the back room have already begun to think up a walloping wing-zinger one. My bright boys are thinking they're on the right track. They'll think one up quick, and we'll send you right back." Those boys in the back room were sure knew how to putter. They made me a thing called the upperly sputter, and I jumped aboard, my heart all aflutter, and I steered toward the land of the upside-down butter. This machine was so modern, so frightfully new, no one knew quite exactly what it would do. But it had several faucets that sprinkled blue goo, which somehow would sprinkle the zooks as I flew and gum up that upside-down butter they chew. I was racing Pall Mall when I heard a voice yell, "If you sprinkle us zooks, you'll get sprinkled as well." Van Itch had a sputter exactly like mine, and he yelled, "My blue gooer is working just fine, and I am here to say that if youks can goo zooks, you better forget it, because zooks can goo youks." I flew right back home, and as you have guessed, I was downright despondent, disturbed, and distressed. I saw just as soon as I stepped on land, so were all the girls of the Butter Up Band. The chief drum majorette, Miss Yuki Susu, said, "That was a pretty sour flight that you flew, and the chief Yukaroo was looking for you." I raced to the office. The place was a sight. "Have no fears," said the chief. "Everything is all right. My bright backroom boys have been brighter than bright. They thought up a gadget that's newer than new. It is filled with mysterious mukalakamu and could blow up all the zooks clear to Salamagoo. They invented the Bitsy Big Boy Bomberoo. You just run up to that wall like a nice little man, drop the bomb on the zook just as fast as you can. I have ordered all the ukes to stay safe underground while the Bitsy Big Boy Bomberoo is around." That's when Grandfather found me. He grabbed me, he said, "You should be down that hole, and you're up here instead. But perhaps this is all for better somehow. You will see me make history right here and right now." Grandpa leapt up the wall with a loppity leap, and he cleared his hoarse throat with a boppity beep. He screamed, "Here is the end of the terrible town full of Zooks who eat bread with the butter side down." And at that very instant, we heard clup, clup of the feet on the wall of the old Van Itch clupped up. The boys in his back room had made one too. In his fist was another big boy bombaroo. "I'll blow you up," he yelled, "into pork and wee beans. I'll butter side up to small smithereens." "Grandpa," I shouted, "be careful, oh gee. Who's going to drop it? Will you or will he?" "Be patient," said Grandpa. "We'll see. We will see."
Times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance. 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 Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend, and like a willow with a wind. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance.
Good morning. My first reading is from Brian Stevenson, lawyer and author of Just Mercy. He was also the Ware lecturer at our General Assembly here in New Orleans in June 2017. Ultimately, our humanity depends on everyone's humanity. I've learned very simple things doing the work that I do. I've come to understand and to believe that each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. I believe that for every person on the planet. I think if someone tells a lie, they're not just a liar. I think if someone takes something that doesn't belong to them, they're not just a thief. I think even if you kill someone, you're not just a killer.
Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Members and friends generously help us to do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. You can give online at CCUUNOLA.org, stewardship, or by text at 504-370-2659 and text give. You can also send a check to CCUU at 6690 Fleur-de-Lis Drive, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70124.
In the rain, blinded, I'll show you that way back home. But don't you worry, 'cause I've been with you all along.
I ain't worried, 'cause I can feel it, 'cause I can feel it. Yeah, they said it's hard to really see it and the reason why we live it. Don't chase it with your eyes, can recognize it till it's given. The world in front of me became the molding of my vision. The pain that came to me is what I blame on my decisions. How can I find the courage when my heart is feeling missing? How do I find a time when I know that the clock is ticking? I'm a soldier for this love, is guaranteed to be my mission. Wish I could find it easy like I see it in the children. Hey, looking back as I move forward, Sankofa, I want a love that explodes, call it a supernova. What it takes to reach the heavens, let me stand closer. Put the pieces all together, witness Jehovah. God is patient with his son, he plant the seed and let it grow. When I love it unconditional, I learn to let it go. Open your arms, what I'm talking about. Without a doubt, I can feel the love reaching out.
Love reaches out. My love reaches out.
Love reaches out.
Love reaches out.
My love reaches out.
Love
Can you feel it?
reaches out.
Yeah. I'm never giving up, I'm keeping cool, I'm in control. My praise, I give it up, a higher power's in control. This light is guiding me, I'm armed with everything I know. This love is getting closer, I can feel it in my soul. Long as I am living, I still got the time to show the patience that was given from the ones that let me grow. Forgive me for debating back and forth, to and fro. This love is reaching out, I'm giving it to you and yours. Walk with me in solidarity. My sanctuary eases my disparity. When I look into your eyes, I'm looking carefully. What do you know? There is me. No more questioning the things that I can never see. Touch, taste, smell, hear, no more mystery. Just a faith that's stronger than my pain and misery. I found it in myself and it will forever be. The breath of love that gave me the breath of life. A breath of life, spirits give it back and I energize. If I never take another, let my voice come to speak it out. And give you the feeling of love reaching out.
Love reaches out.
Yes, it does.
My love reaches
And I can feel it, I can feel it, I can feel it. Hey.
reaches out. My love reaches
Can you
out.
hear it? Can you hear it? Can you hear it now?
Reaches out.
Oh yes it does.
My love reaches
Can you
out.
feel it? Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Hey.
Reaches out. My love reaches
Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Can
out.
you hear it now?
Love can change you, let it grow. The seeds will reap the love you sow. Fill your heart till it explodes, and love can take over your soul. Love opens doors without a key. It falls through patience and honesty. Trust love and just let it be. Feel the power of love between you and me. Between you and me. Between you and me. Feel the power of love between you and me. Love
Sing it.
reaches out. My love reaches out.
Reaches out.
Yes, it does.
My love reaches
Feel
out.
it? Can you feel it? Can you feel it now?
My love reaches out.
Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Can you hear it now?
My love reaches out.
Love
one soul.
Now is our sacred time for joys and sorrows. So here's what we're going to do. If you are on Facebook, please put your joys and sorrows in the Facebook chat box. I have it up. I am watching on 3 screens. I have it up to be able to read your joy or sorrow aloud as we light candles. If you are on YouTube, you can also write in the comments as well if you are signed in. And then, of course, for those gathered here, our wonderful CCUU President Amy Earhart Lovelace has collected some joys and sorrows that I'm going to be reading aloud as well. So please take this musical moment, and as you feel willing and able, please lift up any joys that you have in this week, month, year, as well as any sorrows that are heavy on your heart that you may share with this community. Now is our time for joys and sorrows.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Our first joy today is on Facebook. Jada writes, "Joy, I saw my kids this week. What a joy indeed." Sorrow, my friend's brother Chris has been missing for 3 months. We lift up your joy, Jada, and we also lift up your sorrow and send thoughts of loving to Chris and your whole family. We have several joys and sorrows from our folks in worship. It is wonderful to see your faces. Sorrow, my partner Christine Elizabeth has to have cervical surgery. She is in consistent pain and discomfort, and the meds are causing cramping. We send love and healing. In grateful anticipation for our returning on Sundays, we look forward to being together, Jim and Vera O'Neill. So look forward to that as well. What a joy. Cynthia writes, "I would like to thank Doug McCash for the incredible coverage of my recent exhibition at the Second Story Gallery." Yes, and this is also just lifting up Cynthia in a million different ways for all that she does. And there was an incredible article on NOLA.com on her wonderful art piece as well as her Star Trek sermon. And we are delighted that Cynthia was also part of our sermon seminar, and she is going to be presenting an amazing sermon later this summer. We are grateful and lucky to have you. I'm grateful for Laura Miller's words today. Amy Earhart Lovelace, yes, incredible. Amy writes, as my year of being CCU board president draws to an end, I am filled with love and pride in our community. I'm confident that our new chapter will be one that we can continue to be proud of. Thank you for supporting me and each other. Amazing. And can I just light a candle of gratitude as well? Amy has been an incredible board president in a really difficult year. She has modeled care, compassion, love, humor, and brilliance to all of us in this community and our entire board, which is a wonderful, wonderful group of people who have gone above and beyond in this time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sorry, I don't know the audio. That might have not been great for Facebook and YouTube. I would like to light a candle for my father-in-law. He just had a book published. He's actually a very renowned Latin American scholar. And he had a recent biography of Lucas Alamand, who is a Mexican political figure in the 1800s. It is coming out very soon, and it was really beautiful. Just have to say that, to see the acknowledgments, to see my husband and 2 children's names in the acknowledgement of this wonderful book. So thinking about all the things, we talked about birth last week, right? All the things we birth in our lives as well as creatively. So joy for that. Finally, a candle of joy for all those things that are just bubbling up, including the excitement of being together next week, including the idea of things beginning to open up, as well as the sorrow of all that we have been through this year, all that we can't yet share, all that we're holding that maybe feels a little too heavy in this time to share as a community. Know we love you and we share your joys and your sorrows. Oh, I am so sorry. There are a few more joys, so this is really exciting. This is what I like. Facebook is surprising me in a good way. Howard writes that the dinners for 6 had at least 14 and was pure joy. The Malones put on a great presentation and a fun gathering. As always, what a joy. Howard Milky writes, sad about the gaps in AV during the service. I will light a candle for that, but I also want to light a candle for the gratitude for all these folks working really hard. So please know that it may be not perfect, but guess what? Let's make good enough what we're trying to do, because we're really trying to connect here, and we're excited about next week as well. Linda writes of our sorrow. Elise is at MD Anderson. Our joy to send her healing vibes. Healing, healing, healing. Sending you healing vibes, Elise. Let us know if you need anything, and if anyone needs anything, please reach out to us at caring@ccuunola.org. We love you and we care for you. And with that, I think we're good. And as we keep going more and more, we will find ways to continue to evolve. That's what we do as Unitarian Universalists, right? So with that, I am delighted to welcome Dr. Laura Miller to our pulpit. And I'm just going to get a thumbs up to our wonderful AV person. Is it okay to turn off the projector? Great. Thank you so very much.
My second reading will be a set of short quotes, read as one flowing piece. They are from Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, from the Christian Bible, Book of Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 7, verse 1, and The Weight of Ink by Rachel Kadish. All interesting people have done something stupid at least once. Judge not, that ye be not judged. I care neither to defend nor attack him. Much as I detest the man, I'll never know the full circumstances behind his choices. Life is muddy. Denying that, thinking there's only one noble path above the fray, can be a poisonous approach to life. And now, heroes and villains, a matter of perspective. Everyone is the hero of their own story. I invite you to keep that in mind while I present examples of various people as part of a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. But first, a matter of perspective. In my pagan tradition, we don't have too many rules, but there are a few. The most important is what is called the Wiccan Rede, and it harm none, do what you will. Another is a well-worn tradition of movement in ritual. Movement is clockwise, the direction that the sun appears to travel. This practice is so established that it was a shock to me when I discovered another earth-centered practice that was contrary. I was in Cherokee, North Carolina, doing research and immersing myself in the Cherokee traditions, and I learned that their ritual movements were the opposite of what I had been taught and had practiced for many years. Honestly, my ways were so ingrained that my first thought was, this is wrong. But I knew that what was really wrong was my reaction. It was disrespectful of their ancient ways. I needed to learn more. Fortunately for me, it was easy enough to do so. I simply asked the elder leader there, in the most respectful way I could, why do you move counterclockwise in the ceremonies? His reply, that's the direction of the earth's turning. My jaw literally dropped. Not a reaction I have very often. But my thought was, how very brilliant. Centuries before the Europeans had a clue, the Cherokee were aware that the earth was round and moved. We were not the center. The sun was not traveling around us. Wow. So much for my way being the one and only right way. When I was a young acting student, one of my earliest lessons was that from the perspective of a villain, the villain has good reason for what they do. And that reason is not being bad. Motivation is a key, the key in many acting philosophies. Early in my career, I was lucky enough to be cast several times in an antagonist role. Honestly, I'm kind of a connoisseur of villains. Not sure why. Perhaps it's left over from those early experiences. There is a genre of literature that retells well-known stories from the villain's point of view. The first example I encountered in my own reading was the 1971 novel Grendel by John Gardner, which retells the tale of Beowulf from the monster's perspective. Another example is Wicked by Gregory Maguire, based on The Wizard of Oz. This one, of course, was made into a hugely successful musical, whose ending, by the way, is not the same as the books. I actually prefer the musical's conclusion. It's more intriguing and fun. I've even dabbled in the genre myself. In my mid-20s, I wrote a play entitled The Wayward Child. It's the Lord of the Rings story, featuring Gollum as the protagonist. My favorite fictional series reveals in its conclusion that a major character, seemingly a villain, was in fact secretly a hero from the beginning. This is actually a major reason that it is my favorite series. As Jordan B. Peterson writes in Beyond Order, consider the characters fabricated by second-rate crafters of fiction. They are simply divided into those who are good and those who are evil. By contrast, sophisticated writers put the divide inside the characters they create, so that each person becomes the locus of the eternal struggle between light and darkness. It is much more psychologically appropriate and much less dangerous socially to assume that you are the enemy, and it is your weaknesses and insufficiencies that are damaging the world, than to assume saint-like goodness on the part of you and your party, and to pursue the enemy you will then be inclined to see everywhere. Everyone is the hero of their own story. A good thing to keep in mind when we strive to respect the inherent worth and dignity of every being. And we, as humans, create our own heroes and villains. For example, I have an acquaintance in Virginia who absolutely despises Thomas Jefferson. She's worse than Alexander Hamilton. Can't shut up about it. I've been hearing from her for over 25 years about how much she sees Jefferson as a villain. Well, of course, he was flawed and made mistakes. But who isn't and doesn't? What it boils down to is she wanted him to have been saintly enough to have lived by a 21st century code in the 1700s. I tell her, you know what people will say about you in the future? Horrible person. She drove a car by herself, didn't even carpool. In the late 1980s, I had a friend who was on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list. Was my friend a villain? Some certainly thought so. I, of course, disagreed. With whom? Law enforcement is the obvious first answer, followed naturally by the establishment media, with a few memorable exceptions, and some people with whom I had previously been friends. Now, my wanted friend was no saint, but consider, Martin Luther King was suspect in the eyes of the FBI. Eugene V. Debs ran for president as a socialist while he was in a jail cell. Henry David Thoreau had his famous night in jail. And Jesus himself was executed as a criminal. I've personally lost track of the number of people I know who have been arrested for peaceful civil disobedience. And let's not forget our own Unitarian Universalist activist, Tim DeChristopher, who was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison for disrupting a gas and oil lease auction by bidding with no means of paying. When released after serving 21 months, he was accepted at Harvard Divinity School. Although he's a convicted felon, he's a hero to me and to others. I'm also a great defender of two of Shakespeare's villains. You'd never suspect it from the plays, but both Richard III and Macbeth were actually very good kings, and nice guys too, at least for their time periods, when killing foes in hand-to-hand combat in war was simply how it was done. When Shakespeare turned these good kings into dramatic bad guys, he was merely sucking up to England's then current rulers. Had he done otherwise, Shakespeare's own life and career would have been in jeopardy. So, what is the spiritual point of all this? For me, One lesson is the old saying about not judging another until you have walked in their shoes, or at least done the mental and emotional exercise of imagining doing that walking. Another lesson is to beware of what popular history reports. Remember, history is written by the winners, and good kings who leave no descendants often suffer from that lack. Richard was killed by Henry VII, Queen Elizabeth I's grandfather. Macbeth was killed not by Macduff, but by Malcolm, the king who took his throne. And sadly, both of these good kings, Richard and Macbeth, are left with undeserved bad reputations. Many victorious conquerors, by contrast, have undeservedly good reputations. Columbus, for instance. Recently, his reputation has been somewhat corrected, but he still has his holiday and more. The capital of Ohio and the District of Columbia being just two examples, even as some jurisdictions are changing the October holiday to Indigenous Peoples' Day. A good reputation is a wonderful thing, but how much more wonderful is truth? Everyone is the hero of their own story. But are they right to feel heroic? Perhaps it's not for us to say. Fundamentally, what is the truth? And what about false perceptions? Some actions feel heroic to the actor, but are not, in fact, forgivable by those who see otherwise. January 6th comes to mind. One of the great villains of American history, John Wilkes Booth, fully expected to be honored and remembered as a great founding father of the Confederacy. Which brings up the topic of stereotypes. Many of you will recall the classic 19th century melodramatic cartoon villains. Dark, handsome, with black capes and twirling mustaches. Guess who they looked like? Speaking of actors and villains, I noticed something interesting shortly after the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. Television and other contemporary fictional villains started looking like Timothy Mcveigh. Actors who resembled him were being cast in the villain roles. It gave me the shivers. Then there are the scary black man stereotypes, like Willie Horton, who was used in a blatant racist move by George H.W. Bush in his successful 1988 presidential campaign. Far too many innocent people have died due to the perpetuation of that villain image. As Ijoma Oluo writes in her book, Mediocre, The Dangerous Legacy of White Male America, our society likes to make heroes out of some of our biggest bigots. I would add that same society makes villains out of some of our truest heroes. In the same book, she writes about Colin Kaepernick, the quarterback who began the practice of kneeling during the Star-Spangled Banner as a protest against police brutality. I'll spare you my own rant about that song, but will say it is both war-glorifying and racist. And Oluo specifically states that Kaepernick himself was, and I quote, villainized. She also quotes football player Michael Bennett, who said of the peaceful kneeling protests, in spite of dealing with hostile management, hostile teammates, hostile fans, press, and even possible police retaliation, Bennett said, at some point, the silence is a sin against God, because you are required to be the person you want to be. You are required to speak up. What is really our obligation as human beings is to change humanity and change society. Among my vast collection of papers, one file is labeled Humor. Among its holdings is a quiz, which has silly yet thought-provoking questions. One of these is, do they have the 4th of July in London? Well, of course they do, but it's only an ordinary day. It's all a matter of perspective. And as everyone should know, had the American Revolution failed, George Washington would have likely suffered a traitor's death by execution. The man we honor as the #1 founding father was, and could have gone down in history as, a great villain in the eyes of the British. Recently, one of my environmental activist colleagues said of our grassroots group, "We are willing to be the bad guys." What he meant by this is that we are willing to go against the culture's norms. We are willing to take on the label of rabble-rouser, agitator, and even the silly current one, libtard, all for a higher cause. We speak truth to power. We rock the boat. As teen climate activist Greta Thunberg said, we become the bad guys who have to tell people these uncomfortable things because no one else wants to or dares to. As I see it, the worst villains are the ones masquerading as heroes. You know them, or of them. They come in numerous varieties. Some wear uniforms while kneeling on the necks of their victims. Some wear suits as they promote killing policies. Some even wear jeans and t-shirts as they spread their, perhaps less widespread, mayhem. And we may, on occasion, even see a villain in the mirror when we have let ourselves down, whether by a sin of commission or omission. We are all potential heroes and villains. It's a matter of perspective. The 16th century reformer, John Bradford, was said to have uttered the following upon seeing a criminal being led to his execution: "There, but for the grace of God, go I." Sometimes a hero must accept being called a villain. At least that is usually only a temporary label. One hopes that eventually history will correct the record. Sometimes that works, but sometimes it does not. I invite you to consider, for what cause or in what situation are you willing to be labeled bad? What is your true story? The one where you are the hero. What must you stand or stand up for? Choose carefully. Real heroes are those who know when, for the greater good, it's the right thing to bear the label of villain. Or, as the late John Lewis might have said, know when it's time to make good trouble. Thank you, and blessed be. Today's benediction is by Ella Brennan. There are times when you just have to stand up and do something. How do you know when to stop what you're doing, stand up, and take a stand on something? You know in your gut just listen to it. You're supposed to be everything you're capable of. Get in there, stand up and be counted for the betterment of all. We used to call it the common good. I still believe in it deeply.
We thank you all for joining us. We love you, and for many of you, we will see you in person next week. And for those who are still joining us online, we will continue to evolve. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to sharing our community more and more. We love you, and we will see you soon.